Good afternoon and a very warm welcome on behalf of the Next Tourism Generation Skills Alliance during the Cortina Digital Forum. My name is Lopke Elbers and I will have the privilege of being a host and moderator for our session today and the panel discussion this afternoon. We appreciate the delegates that join us on this panel. I am very pleased to introduce the topic of today through the Next Tourism Generation Alliance project. It was created 2 years ago with an innovative and transformative concept. We created the first European alliance to transform the cooperation around the topic of skills for the tourism industry. Now we are in a new moment. We are in a new phase, let's say, due, of course, to the situation. But the European Commission has shown again how important the skills are, since in this project, digital, social, and green skills are prioritized again. The Next Tourism Generation has been created around the key concept, which is a strong alliance between the industry and the public sector. This alliance needs to be strategic, but at the same time very operational. We hope this is the starting point for a stronger cooperation, also with the actors that are part of the panel today and also the participants that are listening today. Because it is more important than ever, of course, that the project will not only be supported, but will be delivered with support. My colleague is going to explain how we invested skills gaps and future skills needs for tourism. And to give some more boundaries, the project has been designed to tackle skills development for travel agencies and tour operators, destination management, accommodation, visitor attractions, and food and beverage operation. Of course, we know that the tourism industry value chain is very big, and at the start we addressed the 5 initial subsectors with the objective to create this transformative model for operational skills. So we are now in the third year, or actually in the last year, we are selecting different case studies and developing different tools to be used and piloted, and have the industry with us, with the education and research providers, public authorities, and the European Commission umbrella as a way forward for the future of the sector and skills alliances. The main objective of the project is to deliver a strategic blueprint for cooperation. Strategic, but at the same time operational, to establish a tourism ecosystem for tourism skills. Thanks to our speakers and panelists today, we will have a broader perspective on digital skills for post-COVID tourism. And we end this with a very engaging discussion this afternoon on the vision on how to deliver and implement digital skills in the future, that all panelists will underline from their own point of view. And how do we make sure we focus on the right skills? We are going to start with sharing some more results of the Next Tourism Generation research. And I would like to invite Corné Dijkmans, who is managing the Academic and Applied Research Program of Breda University of Applied Sciences in the Netherlands, and led the skills assessment of this project. Corné, today we will be talking about digital skills for post-COVID tourism and a shared vision, opportunities, and also possible action points. And from the activities of the Next Tourism Generation Alliance, the digital skills gaps and future skills needs, what can you share from the research that you did in the project and about the focus of skills development in the digital way for the tourism sector? Corné, can you start showing us some more results?
Of course. Thank you, Lopke, for the introduction. Indeed, I brought some slides. I hope the slides are visible or can be made visible. So yes, as Lopke introduced, we have this Next Tourism Generation project, which is an Erasmus Plus project by the European Commission. And what we did is, we took some research in the tourism industry, since, as we all know, the tourism industry is quite dramatically changing because of all these emerging technologies, not only on the side of the consumer. Of course, the consumer has a lot of new options now in defining experiences from a tourist point of view, such as with AR, VR, etc., supported technologies, but also not the least for all tourism companies who need to deal with all these kind of technologies, which makes that a lot of occupations that didn't even exist maybe 5 or 10 years ago are now in high demand. And the question within our project is how can we deal with all these kind of emerging skills gaps that may be part of tourism in the next coming years. So, in short, the Next Tourism Alliance aims to build a structural mechanism in each country, together with all kind of tourism stakeholders, for tracking and bridging the gaps between current and future tourism skills. So that's what we did essentially in the research part so far in the frame of this project. Then to build a strong alliance between demand and supply of skills, the relationship between tourism education, governments and industry needs to be improved in a structural way. And that is the second goal of the Next Tourism Alliance project. And last but not least, we need to build a kind of a matrix, a kind of an overview, a benchmark, where employees, as well as employers, entrepreneurs, trainers and students can partake in a set of modules in relation to social, green and digital skills. And of course, today we focus on the digital skills. So it's quite an important, I would say, a flagship project, a blueprint project from the perspective of the European Commission to build this mechanism and to be prepared for all the new things that are going on in the industry with regard to the digital skills. So what we did is, and this is data from before the COVID, this is something to take into account. We had our data collection before the COVID crisis started in March 2020. In the 8 countries of the European project that is part of the Next Tourism Generation, we did a survey with consisting of 1,400 participants. We did 250 interviews under tourism executive throughout Europe. And what we did in the green, social and digital skills, we asked participants what is their perspective and their perception of the current level of skills in green, social and digital skills, and what they think what will be the needed level in about 10 years, around 2030, with respect to these skills on a scale of 1 to 5. So the lowest score is 1 and the highest score is 5. And to give you a glimpse on what we saw with regard to the digital skills, so in the column current, this is what the executives in the tourism sector throughout Europe thought about the current level of skills. And then in the second column, there's the future skills that are projected by these executives. So we can calculate what is the gap and the relative gap as well. And without diving too much into details, because this introduction is quite short, but without showing you all the details, you can see that, looking through the green, social and digital skills, the digital skills, they show the largest gaps throughout all the skills that we had included in this research. And within the digital skills, the largest gaps are within artificial intelligence, skills related to all kind of new hardware technologies such as AI, VR, AR. These are really wide gaps that we need to bridge in the next coming couple of years with all the education, training, etc. As said, this is only a short contribution, but all the full analysis and all the full reports of this in-depth research that we partook in the last couple of years are available on the project website, nexttourismgeneration.eu. So I gladly invite you to have a look over there and have a look at the details of this study. It's quite interesting to see how the skills gaps are expected to develop in the next coming years, and what we should do from the perspective of the project, but for the whole industry, of course, to bridge the skills gap. Also, there's an interesting article that we composed about the results of this study, and you can look it up. The hyperlink is projected over there. Maybe the presentations are distributed at the end of the session. But there's an analysis as well, and these tables are included in this. So please have a look over there. It's quite interesting. But let's jump over to some conclusions that we took from the digital skills research in the Next Tourism Generation project. I would summarize it with saying what is needed in the tourism industry with regard to digital skills is high tech with a human touch. So we all know that it's all about high tech, and that high tech is important. But from a tourism perspective, we are in a service industry, and although it's highly information intensive, the human aspect of the industry, the service aspect, is very important. So what can we do to support these human-centered industry, this service industry, with the findings of the research and with the high tech that we're all encountering in the frame of what we're all doing. So let's start with saying that fluency is needed in let's say the common digital solutions, such as working with office applications, desktop publishing software, online security, online media, etc. So all these executives expect that workers can work with these kind of applications as a kind of a fluency in working with this and having no problems in adapting to this and making this part of their daily work. So this is one of the first conclusions. And of course, although not all millions of employees throughout Europe needs to be digital specialists, that would be a bridge too far, I think. There should be a basic understanding of the most emerging concepts at the moment with regard to artificial intelligence, data analytics, virtual reality, augmented reality, and robotics, just to keep ahead of what's going on and to keep aware of all the rapid developments and to be able to be the counterpart in talking with tourism technology providers in what's going on and to see how it can be implemented to strengthen the products that are distributed in tourism. And it's impossible to train everyone, of course, in all systems, all upcoming changes, because it's so much and the developments are so rapidly evolving. And in every company, it can be different, of course. But what is a conclusion from the research, it is that self-learning capacities are key. So when we have people who have transversal skills and who adapt quite easily to all kind of rapidly changing circumstances, these self-learning capacities can make professionals quite rapidly aware of what's happening and adapt to the new situation as well. And as already indicated, we're in a service industry, so we need to approach technology from a human-centered context. So in the end, we are in a human and where the industry where the human interface is quite important. So it should always be a kind of a combination of information technology and more social, transversal, social, cultural skills. And all these kinds of skills are needed to build and strengthen relationship, because it's all about relationship. It's not about the numbers. It's not about tables, about Excel sheets. It's about building and strengthening relationship. And that's what we should do. And digital skills should help in the end with this. And also we should build strong tourist experiences. And as we all experience now ourselves in the frame of the COVID crisis, is to be able to support the tourist product with online experiences. This is very important, and this is something that we should take up. And this is something that will not going to end, or that will going to change when the COVID crisis will hopefully end in maybe after summer or next year or whatever. So we should be aware how to enhance these tourist experiences. So this is a second important part of technology in relation to the human-centeredness of of tourism. We should seek ways to drive product personalization. This is also something coming out of the research, to make tailor-made solutions to what customers need, with apps, with nudging in apps, etc. So something that can be fed with technology as well. With, for instance, conversational interfaces, with chatbots, we can improve the interactions with customers. Of course, there are a lot of questions. There are all kind of reviews, online interactions going on social media, and modern conversational interfaces may come into play here to drive this and to improve this as well. To understand consumer behaviors and to model scenarios, as we see in the current crisis, we need tools to be able to deal with these kind of crises and to model scenarios, and we need an in-depth view in consumer behavior as well. And last but not least, in the improvement of the interaction with customers, it's all about dealing with online opinions, reviews, and fake news that is all over the place, all over internet, and digital skills should also be aimed at dealing with these kind of things, and make our tourism employees stronger in coping with this. This is only a short summary of what we did. As said, I kindly refer you to the project website, nexttourismgeneration.eu, for all further insights. And may I conclude this short introduction, and thank you for your attention, and give the floor back now to Lopke as our moderator. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Corné, for underlining that upskilling, reskilling, and reshaping training on digital skills is vital for the future of the tourism sector, and also underlining that the human touch is so important. What was already presented in the previous panel, the high tech with a human touch is actually the basis of skills development when it comes to terms of digital. Joining me now to discuss this from another perspective, I'm very delighted to welcome our panelists, which are Antonio Barreca, the General Manager of Fede Turismo Confindustria, Carlo Corazza, Head and Spokesperson for the Italian Office of the Parliament, Emmanuel Monnier, EU Travel Tech Secretary General, and Corné Dijkmans, who will be joining us as well. A very warm welcome to all four of you. Carlo Fidanza, member of the European Parliament, unfortunately could not be here, but he have made a letter from him to read. So I want to read what he was going to tell about this topic. Dear friends, unfortunately, a sudden and concurrent commitment prevents me from joining you, although virtually, for this important edition of the forum. When in 2012 I had the honor of being rapporteur for the European Parliament of the first report on EU strategies for tourism, the digital revolution in the sector had already begun, and we were wondering about future scenarios and the need to invest in the training of new professionals able to ride this revolution. In recent years, the evolution and application of digital technologies and profoundly changing the way people live, work, travel, and do business, and in the process, they are transforming and reshaping tourism. The scope and uptake of digital technologies varies across countries, sectors, organizations, and places. The resulting opportunities and barriers create an uneven playing field, which is exacerbated by a growing gap between tech-driven and globally connected tourism businesses and traditional micro and small businesses, often characterized by low-tech business practices. In the stage post-COVID, part of the Next Generation EU, allocated to the digital transition, can and must be massively used to support the tourism sector, which has been severely affected by the pandemic. Next week, the European Parliament will be called to approve the EU COVID-19 certificate, an essential tool to restart European tourism industry and to avoid the creation of corridors and bilateral agreements between countries of origin and destinations. It is essential that this certificate is fully interoperable, non-discriminatory, and guarantees adequate protection of the data collected, and is accompanied by the end of quarantine and more uniform procedures. This will be a first significant test to understand if the Europe that wants to invest strongly in digital transformation can be really ready for this challenge. Certainly, the mission of the European institutions can only be the support of this process with an eye to the tourism industry. Thank you again for your attention, and I wish you a good continuation of your work. Carlo Fidanza. Now, ladies and gentlemen, with this final words of Carlo Fidanza, in this panel, if you do have any questions, get them in quickly as you can, as short as you can, so we can see at a glance what your question is and who it is for, and I try to squeeze them in later on. Well, let's dive straight in on our first topic, the challenges and opportunities in the development of digital skills in tourism. We heard from the previous sessions as well about the immediate challenges, the important, and also the impact that skills development has on this industry. But as we look further ahead, we need to also talk about the vision and future of digital, and we need to know where we are going. I would like to start with you, Antonio. For you, Mr. Barreca, what are the key challenges to prepare for the tourism of tomorrow and beyond in the light of skills development focusing on digitization and technology to meet the opportunities? Because we tend to talk challenges, but often these are opportunities. Mr. Barreca, what is your opinion?
Well, first of all, thank you. Thank you, Lopke. Thank you, Cornet. We are cooperating with you for this important project of the European Commission that was granted to us 3 years ago in a market and in a scenario that was totally different. The original objective of this project was that of giving the European institution at the end of this year a blueprint of tourism by indicating what could be the strategies to properly train staff in the long term, the staff that would have to manage the huge number of tourists that would come to Europe. Last year, obviously, we found ourselves midway in the project with the problem of COVID-19 that has radically changed the scenario. And we had, therefore, thanks to various colleagues, we had to redirect the targets of this project and rebalance it all on the basis of what was emerging, i.e. a market that went down to zero, that sooner or later will restart, but will certainly restart on different paradigms. In the next few years, the paradigms will be based on different fundamentals, and for these fundamentals, it'll be necessary to also reorganize training on the basis of the results presented by Cornet, which are obviously at the basis for the work we have to do with our project. And also basing myself on what Cornet said before, I'm sorry, but the sound is really bad at the moment. I'm sorry. We can't hear what the gentleman is saying. We can't hear what Mr. Barreca is saying. We are sorry. Probably there are those related to the flexibility and the possibility to work in different scenarios with online experience for those who want to start in their reference market, and also the possibility of understanding which will be the reference markets, and therefore on the basis of the personalization concept we were talking about earlier on. We're sorry, but the sound is impossible. We cannot translate Mr. Barreca. Somebody should tell him that it's impossible to hear what he's saying. I'm sorry.
I don't have his contact, so you need to do this through Liesel, I think.
Don't know what to do. I can't hear him.
Do you hear me?
Unmute yourself.
No, I'm unmuted. 1, 2, 3 testing. Can you hear me? Il mio microfono dovrebbe essere acceso, ma mi sentite? Chiede il dottor Barreca.
I suggest
Posso continuare?
Antonio, do you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Ok.
Okay, I can continue now, it seems.
Vado alle conclusioni. Allora, quindi diciamo tutte queste nuove skills, queste nuove necessità di formare il personale dell'industria turistica
of staff in the tourism industry are obviously one of the most important challenges private businesses have on the one hand, and they immediately have to start, and then on the other hand also the industry of public and private training industry. They will have to reorient their courses to actually manage this new normal we will tackle in the next few years. And digitalization is going to play a major role as a facilitator because it can guarantee the acceleration and the speed of intervention classic systems cannot guarantee, or might guarantee, but in much longer times. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Antonio. And indeed, you were the project initiator at the start of this Next Generation product. We lost a bit of your connection, but nevertheless, we heard a lot of what you were saying, which was really interesting, of course. Now I would like to go to Carlo Corazza and ask him the first question. So, Mr. Corazza, in terms of challenges, as we try to build a more digital tourism sector, do you agree with what you've heard, or are there any other challenges and opportunities you would like to add? Do you also think that those challenges have changed fundamentally because of COVID, or perhaps COVID has accelerated and highlighted the most important ones? Carlo Corazza, the word is to you.
Yes, thank you very much. I think that, well, first of all, I very much appreciated Corné's presentation. I totally share what he said. And also what Mr. Barreca, my friend, said something I totally agree with. I think that COVID-19 has frankly been a storm, especially for the tourism business and the other sectors that have been hit badly. But what is reassuring is that the European Union, also thanks to the strong thrust of the Parliament, has actually seen this terrible crisis as an opportunity to change and also as an opportunity to invest. If we look at the situation since March, well, the European Parliament has worked very hard, and they asked Breton to have tourism as a very important point. And Mr. Breton already provided a positive answer, indicating that about 20% of the recovery fund will have to go to tourism, to the tourist business. There's also been a very important resolution in 2020 at the European Parliament that confirms this request. And so I think that what really changes now is resources, because at last we have the political will and the plan and the new budget in favor of us, together with SURE, another tool that can be used for training, or the special credit line of 200 billion euro coming from the European Central Bank that can certainly help the tourist industry not just to recover, but also to run, possibly, to fill the gap that has been highlighted very clearly by Corné, and which actually represents one of the major handicaps for the competitiveness of the industry. And here we're not talking about a marginal issue, because if the tourist industry, which is strongly linked to the cultural and entertainment industries, does not recover, well, the whole of the European economy might not recover, because as we all know, tourism is a huge growth driver for retail, fashion, textile, for shipbuilding, transportation, heavy industry, whatever. And so investing in training to fill this gap is going to be of paramount importance. And you can be self-assured that the European Parliament will keep on pushing in this direction with great strength. Well, besides the Next Generation EU, another important tool we must absolutely use is the European Social Fund, which has been made on purpose to help businesses recover and invest in training. In Italy, we have the Eco Bonus, Also, the European Parliament asked to extend this eco-bonus to hotels and restaurants. And I think that an important element of the recovery plan, and I'm also thinking about the Italian national plan, could also be a digital bonus that can help tourist businesses not just invest in digital technology and or allow for the digital transformation, which is indispensable, but also to train its staff.
Thank you very much, Mr. Corazza, also for the idea of having a digital bonus and for outlining the steps and the vision that needs to be taken in this area of this vital sector. And as said, as you also underlined, we need a clear vision of the future. Emmanuel Monnier, I would like to turn to you. And can I ask you a very specific question in terms of digitization for the future and from your role in EU Travel Tech, where you shape the strategy and the direction of EU Travel Tech? Are more sources and resources needed? Does it mean remodeling opportunities? And how can we seize this as a moment to make a dramatic shift in thinking from the perspective of tech and travel?
Well, thank you, Lopke. Can you hear me well?
Yes, we hear you wonderfully.
So. Okay, perfect. Well, first of all, I would like to thank the Cortina Forum for this invitation. I'm very happy to be able to represent the EU travel tech industry in this forum. So our association represents the online travel agencies, the meta search engines, the travel management companies, the global distribution systems, so all the players of the travel distribution ecosystem. And well, it's always difficult to be the last one speaking because a lot of very smart things have already been said, and it's hard to add anything that will be useful. I think that, well, as Carol just said, the COVID-19 crisis is a crisis that has never been seen in history by the tourism ecosystem or by any other, or by the economy as a whole, very clearly. Now the question is how we will get out of it, and what will it mean for the tourism industry. And so more specifically for the travel industry, I think what will be key is to face the crisis that is really COVID-19, a crisis of confidence. Once those travel restrictions will be lifted, people will travel again because they will feel confident that they will have the required safety and health conditions wherever they want to travel. So they will need all the information in order to go there. The reliable information, the non-conflicting information, and that's the concern currently. That's why, for example, the digital green certificate is being currently discussed in Brussels, as Mr. Corazza just mentioned. It will be key. And how to provide this information, how to provide this transparency that will be required by all travelers, that's where digitalization is key. Digitalization, digital tools, and more specifically platform, have been designed from the beginning to provide transparency to users. Basically, it's a tool to connect two sides of a market, users and travel services providers, and to provide information from one side to the other. So now this request for information will be able to be conveyed through those platforms, through those digital tools. So digitalization, which has been discussed about in the tourism industry for many years, will now be a prerequisite, because if you're not able to convey the right information, if you're not able to reassure people, to restore trust through those digital tools, you won't be able to attract customers. So it's as simple as that. So what does it mean in terms of skills? It means that digital skills will be a must-have where it was a nice-to-have before. If you're not able to use those tools in order to convey this information to your customers, you won't have customers. Now, what is the good news? Corne's presentation was very, very interesting in this regard. You have some tools that are needed. You have some where you need a basic notion, but for a lot of them, you will have other tech services providers which will be there to help you, to assist you in order to use those tools without mastering them in the first place. And that's why, for example, platforms are there for. If you look at what an Expedia, Booking.com, or TripAdvisor allow to do to an attraction, a restaurant, or a hotel, or short-term accommodation. Without much digital skills than the one required to actually open a Facebook page, you can market your products all over the world. You can have access to worldwide customer base. So obviously those skills will be developed, AI, data, and analytics, but you will have intermediates to help you to navigate through this jungle that is internet now in order to present your products and to market them to the world. So yes, you need better digital skills for the tourism industry, but obviously you have a specialization, and using those specialists will allow you to master those skills indirectly. So I am quite hopeful for the post-COVID tourism industry. Thanks, Lopke.
Emmanuel, also for you set up the conversation we are about to have in the near future. And before we go into the depth of this topic, I actually have another thing that I really want to discuss with you in a very concrete way, because our second topic is, of course, how can digitization and technology help by building and growing brands in the tourism sector? And I think in terms of investment for the tourism sector, building and growing the sector and individual brands increasingly requires implementation and launching of new technology trends and digital that can play a role in shaping the future of tourism. And of course, we ask ourselves, how can technology and digitization help? How can we better connect marketing, branding, and technology in order to achieve a strong added value as a sector in the eyes of consumers, and especially in the view of the expected post-COVID-19 recovery? And Emmanuel, I mentioned you have a lot of EU-specific expertise in travel tech. What impact do digital skills have on innovative entrepreneurship, being a small organization or a big organization? And can you also tell something about the new digital skills and technologies that you see are emerging? Or do you think more confirming the fundamentals were already there? So I want to ask you, how do you see the role of digitization and technology for the use of growing tourism brands on the short term and long term, and being a big or small organization, and some trends that you might have seen? We're curious to hear.
Thank you, Lopke. Well, first of all, when you're a big organization currently in the tourism industry, you have to be digital by essence, because this is the only way to reach out to a customer base which is wide enough if you are big. So you will be digital. It's not really a question. It's more for small organizations that the question is really there, because those digital tools are the ones which can make a difference between being a very local player, hardly visible except to the people passing by, and having access to a worldwide customer base. So that's a massive difference. Now, in terms of trends of new tools and therefore new skills that could be developed in the future, I think Cornet was very comprehensive in the presentation. When you talk about AI, when you talk about virtual reality, when you talk about data analytics, these are tools that will be used in the future, and mastering them is obviously an added value as a tourism undertaking for the competitiveness of your company and for the marketing of your products. So clearly, there are trends that will stay for a long time and that will develop over time. It will mean more personalizations of the offers to the customers. It will mean new ways to interact with the customers. There was a mention of chatbots, but well, these innovations will be developed by some players and will be used by all players. So clearly, the skills here that should be mastered are very different if you are a small company, if you are an intermediate, if you are actually a travel service provider. So according to your place, to the position in your ecosystem, what will be required for you is very different, even though those technologies will be used by everybody. There is one trend, and quite worrying trend, that I would like to mention here, and that's coming from a Brussels insider, as you mentioned, because it's an issue which is discussed currently in Brussels and especially in the European Parliament. There is one place where most travelers are starting their shopping path wherever they are trying to prepare their travel, their trip anywhere in the world, including in Europe. It's a place that everybody knows. It's called Google. It's a search engine. And so it's the gateway through which everybody is passing by in order to prepare its travel. And so what does it mean for the travel and tourism ecosystem? It's worrying because, well, since they have this monopolistic position, this very, very, very dominant position, I don't need to remind anyone the figures, they have to accept the conditions imposed on them by this player. The travel and tourism industry at global level is the first customer of Google. It's a sector paying the more in advertising fees to Google. And we're talking here dozens of billions of euros. These billions of euros are not the products are there to pay for service, obviously, but that could be much less without the monopolistic position allowing for an abuse of dominant position. And what I'm saying here has been documented at length by academics, by competition authorities, so I don't need to demonstrate it. Clearly, this is an issue that needs to be tackled for the travel and tourism industry to evolve positively in this new digital ecosystem. It's being done currently in Brussels with discussions around the Digital Markets Act. It's very positive. I'm sure that Mr. Corazza is following that very closely. We are quite positive about the direction adopted by the European Commission. We understand that the European Parliament will go in the same direction. It's very important, and it will be key for the future of the tourism and travel ecosystem industry in Europe as in elsewhere in the world. So I think that's a trend that everybody should have a look on in the coming months.
Well, thank you so much, Emmanuel, for also giving the priority to some of the developing tools and trends that we definitely need to follow, or actually were already growing, but due to COVID-19, of course, we accelerated this. Mr. Corazza, if I can turn to you, what do you, and maybe you can answer this role as well from the perspective of being former head of the unit for tourism at the European Commission, but within this ecosystem of tourism and the influence of digital transformation and disruption caused by the development of technology outside the sector, what do you think is needed to bring a digital transition in a consumer and or guest-oriented market as the tourism sector is?
Thank you very much. Well, first, I want to go back to what Emmanuel Mornier said, because I dealt with that when I was responsible for tourism at the Commission. That's a fundamental point. We must think about an industry that doesn't have high margins, and online bookings, also with sophisticated booking engines, and also with consultancy firms or working in-house. It is very difficult to avoid having to pay a percentage that might be 15, 18%, or even more than that of its own revenues, including taxes, to Booking.com or Expedia, which obviously have a dominant position, as Mornier said, and which in fact pay taxes in fiscal havens. Booking.com has its headquarters in the Netherlands, and they pay a percentage of taxes that cannot be compared to what a hotel has to pay, and usually they have their headquarters in the US and use much of our personal data to organize their advertising campaigns. Take into account that if a hotel wants to be visible on Google, then automatically it goes in competition with other advertising campaigns Google does with the same name of that hotel. So it's not just a question of dominant position, but it's also a question of transferring huge revenues from Europe to the US. As you know, the European Parliament thought a lot for a web tax, not because we like taxes, but simply because we want tax equity. We think that a minimum of taxation for all economic subjects operating in Europe is correct, and that's why we fought for it. This struggle on our own resources has been won, and you know that the 750 billion loan of the Next Generation EU are guaranteed by the own resources of the budget, which will become operational between 2022 and 2023, and this tax should be one of them. So some way or another, I would say that part of this revenues could be held in Europe through the digitalization, so that we can allow for European tourism to be a bit more competitive. It is clear that Booking.com, Expedia and Google are also huge opportunities for the industry of tourism. So we need to find a proper balance, also a proper economic balance between the services, the help and the visibility these web giants give to the tourist segment and the cost of such services. So I think this balance can be found. I also think that the European competition policy still has something to say on these aspects. And now going back to branding, well, it is clear that the struggle is going to take place on the visibility you have on Google or in general on the web. And this, in my opinion, is also an opportunity for the European brand, for the brand Europe. I think that digital technologies can really help the Europe, France, Italy brands to become even more visible throughout the world, because you know that the European Union has its creative power. And so if we can value our castles, our medieval villages, our museums, our archaeological sites, also using new digital technologies, virtual realities, traveling in time virtually, and all those things you can do with new technologies, the more we can strengthen the will of people to come and visit our continent. Because obviously, the artistic, historical, and cultural European heritage obviously cannot be delocalized, and so they'd have to come anyway. So this, I think, is a very important aspect. And I'd stop here. Thank you very much, for the moment at least.
Thank you, Mr. Carazza, and also talking about the perspective and providing some more ideas where to start. Actually, if it's possible, I'd like to ask you a follow-up question. Because we talk about how the scenarios will be and where the opportunities for the brand of Europe will be. But who needs to do what if we meet these challenges and seize these moments of opportunity to a more digital and technology-oriented tourism sector in Europe, and also in terms of collaboration in marketing, branding, and technology across EU? Who needs to do what and where do we start? I'm very curious to hear that from your side as well.
Well, we said at the beginning that we do have the resources, and this is a good piece of news. Let's start with the Next Generation EU, the new European budget, the European Central Bank budget, etc. And then after that, I think there is a very clear role for the different member states that need to use national and European resources to develop the infrastructure. I mean, if I don't have Wi-Fi in the medieval villages in the Pyrenees or in the center of France or in the Apennines in Italy, well, everything else we talked about doesn't make any sense at all, of course. And then it is also important to train entrepreneurs and not just people working for them. This might sound strange, but in 2021, not all entrepreneurs are digitally skilled, so to speak. Not all of them have a clear idea about the digital transformation is not an option.
Thank you very much. That provides some additional ideas how to start and build further from here. Mr. Baraka, I'd like to turn to you as well. In terms of the perspective of digitization and technology, are you concerned about the long-term COVID-19 impact on the sector and the digital skills needed to build and grow tourism organizations? Antonio?
No, perché hai chiesto a me?
Sì.
You can start, yes.
Sì. Ci sente?
Ok, grazie. Allora, no, innanzitutto sono d'accordissimo con
Well,
quello
thank
che
you.
ha detto Carlo
First of all,
finora.
I
Il
agree
problema
with what Carlo said
dell'innovazione
so
nel
far.
turismo
The issue of innovation and tourism,
è molto
he
sensitive,
muted
l'innovazione
himself.
dall'alto. È sempre stato
It's
molto
very
difficile
sensitive to the
portare
problem of
innovazione a
innovation
livello
from top
esteso
to
nel mondo del
bottom. It's
turismo. Ci
always
sono
been
sempre
difficult
stati
to bring innovation into tourism. I can't hear what he says, unfortunately. He muted himself probably, or just freeze. I don't know.
Ok, now? Adesso mi sentite? Ok, riproviamo.
Okay, let's try once more.
Quindi dicevo, l'innovazione nel
Okay,
turismo
I was saying that
è sempre stato un
innovation
problema.
into tourism
E
has
gli
always been an
strumenti per
issue.
portare innovazione nel
Tools
turismo,
actually to bring innovation into tourism.
io sento la regia. Gli strumenti per portare innovazione nel turismo
Innovation to bring
devono essere
tourism
strumenti accessibili e questi strumenti
and innovation have to be accessible. And these tools
perché c'è un problema di cultura.
should. No, I can't hear. It's just broken, completely broken. It comes and goes, and it's impossible to understand. I'm sorry.
I'm changing device. I'm changing the device. Just a second.
Yes, you changed the device. We go on to Corné for a bit. Thank you so much for your patience. So, Corné, I want to turn back to you because we started this event agreeing that we don't only need to know where we want to go, but also how we get there. And thanks to our panelists today, we have a bit more broader perspective on skills development and skills gaps, future skills needs and training needs. And we end this panel, of course, with a very interesting discussion on the vision and how to deliver and implement digital skills in the future. That was underlined again and again. And can you give us a broader perspective developing a shared vision, or what is your vision of how digitization and skills across EU in terms of post-COVID involve education, training, and businesses in marketing, branding, and technology? How should that look like, in your opinion?
Thank you, Lopke. Yeah, as already indicated in my short introduction, and I think that's actually what we are doing in the frame of the project of NTG, is to bring all the parties to the tables in what we call in the project. We call it industry-led skills groups, and this is a kind of a combination of all stakeholders that should be put around the table and talk about this, to continuously build a kind of a mechanism to see how skills gaps are evolving and what is necessary in terms of permanent training and education to bridge these skills gap. Because when we talk about these skills gaps, we did this study, we conducted this study about 1.5 years ago, just shortly before the COVID crisis. But when you look at it now, maybe gaps will be different. We did some additional analysis as well in the field of social, green, and digital skills. And when you look, for instance, at social skills, then with this COVID crisis, there's a lot of need for additional adaptability and flexibility, critical thinking, problem-solving techniques, how to cooperate, how to deal with these kind of situations where this conference, which should be in a live context, is now fully in an online context. And for instance, with regard to the digital skills, we need more knowledge about modeling of scenarios and simulations. Data analysis needs to transform data into relevant products, and to deal with all these kind of things. So I think it's not a matter of just taking a picture, but we should have a kind of a movie and be continuously aware of what's happening in the frame of these skills gaps, and to build a structural mechanism to build this. And as you say, Lopke, in your question, with regard to marketing and brand building, there's a lot of things going on. As indicated by one of the other speakers, Google is very big, and Booking.com, these are I would say the big dinosaurs in an online context. So we should see how we meet these kind of demands and make tourism employees aware of what is needed to build online brands in an internet context, which is completely different, because it's so much faster and more rapidly evolving as it was in the early days. So I think these kind of things should be I would say the seeds that we need to sow now to harvest maybe in 5 or 7 years, to have a tourism force that is more aware of what is needed and that is ready for, I would say, tourism 2.0 in an online context. So thank you, Lopke.
Thank you, Corné, for giving us this perspective on how to collaborate more, which is, of course, the basic fundamentals of the Next Tourism Generation project. Antonio Barreca, I'd like to turn back to you. Maybe ask the question just again. Thank you for being here. In terms of the perspective of digitization and technology, I would like to know, are you concerned about the long-term COVID impact on the sector and the digital skills needed to build and grow tourism organizations? And second, I'm also curious what you think about the benefit of digitization and technology for tourists and guests and the sector as a whole. So, Antonio, we would like to hear what you have to say.
Grazie. Le preoccupazioni sono ancora tantissime. Noi in realtà
Well, thank you. We still have lots of worries. In actuality, we do not know as yet what kind of behavior travelers will have post-COVID. This year is going to be our first testing ground, and we shall understand to which extent fears will affect travelers. We know that they're looking forward very much so to go back traveling, but at the very beginning, probably the younger generation would be the lion's share, up to 50, 55 years of age. The silver tourism, that is over 60, which was indeed a good share of international tourism, will delay the restart. And they probably are going to restart traveling, but with definitely lower growth rates than in the past. So the digital is actually very useful to anticipate those trends, to know more and to know in advance how to gear our offerings, because if it's true that over the next couple of years post-pandemic, we may count on a category of travelers who are more or less young, we have to adjust our offerings in order to meet their own expectations and demands for this age bracket. Later on, we'll understand whether fears is overwhelming on other issues, or whether the change of our lifestyle imposed by this pandemic has become a permanent disease or just something temporary. Many analysts are making different forecasts. Some of them talk about a recovery of tourism starting from next year. Other authoritative researchers are talking about 2025. But all these forecasts are being based on non-accurate data, because there are many variables which are not under our control so far. So these are patterns that have to be adjusted on a real-time basis. And once more, and we're back to digitalization and digital technologies, which are going to be very helpful to us. This will make us save billions of euros, because investments have to be made at the right time. Otherwise, you just waste them all. Take air transport, for instance. This industry is trying to understand what kind of new normal they're going to be faced with. What are the preferences? We know that at the very beginning it would be short-haul flights, therefore domestic flights, and little by little, the long-haul routes will reorient air companies, and they will try to re-establish previous connections. We have to change lots and lots of things. And we have to do it both at the level of small to medium-sized companies, because they have to make a contactless as possible travel experience, and we can do it through digitization. We have technologies, some of which are easy to be accessed. Other technologies, which are a little more expensive, are actually becoming cheaper because of the increased demand. Other investments require an action by the governments, or in the case of the recovery plan or the Next Generation EU launched by the European Union, which can guarantee the high sizing rate enough to be able to form the minimum critical mass to make change a piece of evidence. I don't know whether you've heard what I said before. We have to go back to the topic of digitization from our own point of view. It goes hand in hand with that of cultural digitization or digital culture. And tourism is still a kind of a top-to-bottom approach. You have the tip of the top, which makes massive use of last generation digital technologies, artificial intelligence, offline, virtual reality, etc. And then the digital basis gets bigger and bigger, but with a lesser and lesser impact. We have to make it more accessible to all and be understood by very small and small entrepreneurs as well. All this can happen if we, in parallel, have a vocational training. And I'm getting back to the topic of our panel today, innovation, digital culture, and vocational training must become a paramount in an industry such as tourism, which is so labor intensive. And independently from the size of the organization, any category today needs to be digitized. Chefs, waiters, barmen, back office people, front office people, whoever has to interact with a smartphone and with a central organization so that you can minimize timelines and optimize performance, anticipate problems, and help indeed everyone to become more flexible and solve on a real-time basis problems that might crop up. And these problems do not just have to do with COVID, but can be different ones as well. In this way, we will make it possible little by little to turn tourism not into a more digital industry, but also make it what is being defined by everyone, the 21st century industry, which cannot function with instruments dating back to the 20th or even worse, 19th centuries. Thank you very much. We need to be updated, therefore. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Barreca, for this final closing words and relating it right back to the need of digital skills development, where we already started with this Next Tourism Generation project and other EU and European Commission initiatives that are great in supporting this development to bring tourism as a sector a step further. And I think today we also took the conversation a bit further, going into depth in this topic. And it is so important to keep addressing the importance of digital skills development to create better experience for people that are visiting the countries, but also the people who are living in the tourism destinations. I want to thank you very much, all of you, for taking part in this panel. Thanks to all of our panelists for their contributions to identify some of the answers on the questions that we have. I like to thank this for the contribution on the debate and how digital skills post-COVID can look like for tourism, and highlighting the tools that we need to investigate more or where we need to invest more in, and our time, where do we spend our time to invest in digital skills development. I like the organization and their work in a technical way, and I like to thank the audiences for joining us, and we hope that you as well see this as an important way as we go forward. So I wish you a very pleasant closure of the day. Thank you. Goodbye.